Welcome to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. The Alumni podcast where you get to hear the inspiring stories and transformation that DVC has had to offer its alumni. And now, on with the episode. Okie doke, so we are live, and I want to have Brandon introduce himself. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
All right. Well, my name is Brandon Brookshire. I live here I live nearby in Walnut Creek, California. I'm a DVC alum, and I currently work at Heritage Bank of Commerce.
Cool. And let's talk a little bit, because I think your story, we talked briefly. I mean, we've been talking since, 6 months or something like that about getting together for this, but you're a busy guy. You've got a lot of irons in the fire. So talk a little bit about kind of like what your journey was to get to this area. Did you grow up around here?
Somewhat. I'm actually from the Central Valley. So I was born in Modesto, and then I grew up, I went to high school, junior high and high school out in Oakdale. But my dad actually lived here in Walnut Creek, for most of my life. So that was kind of my connection to this area. So when I got out of the military back in 2000, well, I shouldn't say that. When I relocated from Arizona back in 2013, it was to come here to the Bay Area to work with my dad.
Okay. So you mentioned briefly about being in the military, and so let's talk a little bit about that, if you're allowed to. If it's as long as you only get to talk about the non-classified stuff. So we'll just yeah. So what drew you into the military, and what was kind of like the driving force on that?
I think there was an expectation that my dad had put out there that he always wanted me to serve, and I think he always wanted me to serve in the Air Force like he did. And so when I was really hesitant at first. I mean, who wants to go and join the military? I mean, especially when you feel like it's being forced on you. But as I got older, junior in high school, I wanted to do something different. I saw a lot of people just kind of going off. Small town, people stuck around. So a lot of people were kind of just going to the state colleges nearby, Stan State in Turtle Rock, for example. And I kind of, it's like, do I go to community college, go to the state, Stan State? What do I do? And the idea of joining the military and getting to travel and getting life experience became more and more attractive to me. Not to mention, surprisingly enough, I grew up in a small conservative town, and not too many high schoolers were going to join the military at that time.
Really?
So yeah, well, we were at war. There was that too. So
okay.
So there was definitely some hesitancy to do so, but yeah, I wanted to do it. I wanted to prove something to myself, and kind of get out there and experience life, and figured out I'll just go to school after.
Okay. So did you end up in the Air Force?
I did.
Okay. And what'd you do while you were in the Air Force?
Sure. So I had so my main job was I was an electronic technician on aircraft. So a little bit of a mix between, technician, electronic work, and just maintenance, like aircraft maintenance. That was my main job. So I worked on systems that it's called electronic warfare. It's a subset of avionics, and its focus is to disrupt enemy communications and their, what's called their command and control network. So I worked on systems that specialize in that. Also, like missile defense systems and on aircraft and electronic countermeasures, that sort of thing. So that was my main job, but I also had a couple of ancillary roles. I was a reserve. They called it a security forces augmentee, but it's like basically you're a reserve military cop that's kind of on call for exercises or base defense or whatever. And then I was also an honor guardsman. So I did ceremonial guardsman duties for funeral services, which there were a lot of in Arizona, because it's a big retirement community. So a lot of veterans and retirees passing away. Also, it was wartime, so we had an active duty. I only participated in one, but there was an active duty death. So I did that for 6 months as well. So in the course of 4 years, I had, one main job and 2 other jobs that I had kind of little special assignments that I had taken on.
My niece did a 20-year career in the Air Force.
Sure.
She ended up in the kitchen and she loved it, but she also got a chance to travel all over the place, because she ended up deployed, I think, in Cyprus, in Greece, in all over Europe and Germany, and so she went and visited parts of her family there, and she loved it. And she's now retired and pursued. I think she's on her 2nd or 3rd degree, kind of like you are.
Yeah.
But she just loves it. So, did you get a chance to deploy some fun places, or?
Yeah, nowhere very fun. I went to Afghanistan in 2011. So that was really the only time I spent overseas. It was on the way there and on the way back. So that it was pretty isolated to that. I didn't get to travel a whole lot. I always joke and say, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have joined the Navy, because I would have been able to actually travel to some places. The Air Force is hit or miss. I mean, you can get stationed someplace really awesome. You can move around a lot. But then there's, experiences may vary. You can also just get stuck someplace for a very long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more or less my situation. Had I re-enlisted, I probably would have been in Arizona quite a while longer, which is, oddly enough, I really like and miss Arizona now. But at the time, I was kind of antsy and wanting to go someplace else. But I went from Texas to Mississippi, back to Texas, and then Arizona. And then from Arizona, I deployed to Afghanistan.
So, yeah, and I do get that whole, it could be hit and miss. You can end up someplace. So I know that the weather in Mississippi especially it can be brutal, and yes, we're talking hurricanes, but I'm talking more about just the humidity. I don't mind heat. But, like Arizona, I happen to like Arizona. It's a dry heat. And yes, it's freaking hot. But, at the same time, you can at least, you at least sweat enough for it to evaporate.
Yeah. And the infrastructure is they have infrastructure suited for that. There's air conditioning everywhere you go. Every patio has misters on it. Drive-throughs have misters. There's a lot of things are built indoors to be kind of shielded from the heat. And even in Mississippi, if you've ever been to Europe, they're not big on air conditioning over there. So it really has made me appreciate, you know what, nowhere you go in the US is really that bad, because we have pretty good air conditioning and iced drinks everywhere we go.
Yeah. Well, and I know, like San Francisco, for instance, like now that we have, climate change is affecting it, we get more and more of those. You get a 90-degree weather, a week in San Francisco, and it's brutal because, if you live out there, there is no air conditioning in a lot of those places, so it's tough.
Yeah, you got to put it in like a window unit or something. Yeah, they have some pretty good, AC units now, but it's difficult. So you went through your being and I also I imagine that being honor guard, it's like you had to drill because it's very much about the precision of it, because you are honoring this fallen comrade. And so imagine you spend a certain amount of your time doing that. And, you don't get to drop the flag or go get to drop did you enjoy that particular duty? I mean, as weird as that sounds, I'm sorry, but I know some people like that sort of thing. So yeah, so I've asked my wife, and she'll definitely attest to this. But I'm very detail oriented, and I don't know, like people throw around the term OCD a lot. I wouldn't say that I'm like diagnosed or anything, but I'm very meticulous, and so for me, I really enjoyed that. And I enjoyed discipline, and I enjoyed challenging myself. So I did find a lot of joy in that. Also, I understood like the importance of that. You're representing an entire branch of the United States military, and to a larger degree, the entire United States military, depending on where you're at, what you're doing. And so I took it very seriously that when we were out and in public, whether we were doing like an honor guard or flag posting ceremony, something like that, in a parade, and most especially if we were at a funeral service, to take it very seriously. So I was quite good at it. They put me in charge of training. I was a junior, enlisted airman. So I wasn't, I wasn't actually in charge like as a non-commissioned officer in that role, but I was in charge of training. So yeah, I got pretty good at it, and I was there constantly. So typically it's a 1-year rotation where you spend 1 month working at your unit, and then you'll spend the next month working at the honor guard team, and you go back and forth for a year. So it's like 6 months on, 6 months off. And for me, because I was in a unit that had a high deployment rate, so a lot of units, they'll deploy their entire unit and then come back. My unit was continuously deployed. And so instead of us all going out together and coming back together, we would relieve people who we always had airmen in our unit deployed overseas. And so they weren't going to let me spend a whole year being undeployable. So I was there for 6 months straight. And in that 6 months, I was able to get really good at it because I was doing it every single day, 7 days a week, a lot of times. So. Well,
and to your point about it, and I agree. I think a lot of people throw around that whole OCD thing way too much. Yeah. For one thing, it is like on a spectrum to some degree. Right. And then also it's like, just because somebody likes precision, and you do strike me as that guy that, you want to get it, the precision in it, and it's just, for me, it's like with bicycles, it's not so much about how they look, but it's sounds they make. So there are certain sounds where it's like, that's what it's supposed to do. And then it's like, things where it's just like, sometimes I have a little bottle of bike lube in my pocket and I'll hear somebody's bike clanking by and it's just like, hey dude, stop. We're gonna do something with that chain, just because it's that you like to, and I could see where that would be very satisfying, is having that absolute precision on that, and the honor of it, again. So you rotated out, you decided not to re-enlist for a variety of reasons, and you ended up coming here, and your dad lives here in the area.
Yes.
Okay. And so you came up here kind of like, what am I going to do now? And so.
Yeah, I was living in Arizona at the time. I got out and I was actually considering going to school out there. I was going to go to the University of Arizona. A good friend of mine at the time was moving up to Phoenix. I was down in Tucson. So he was moving up to Phoenix to go to ASU, and, had the GI Bill available. So I was I was also working as a civilian still for the military. And so I had options. I didn't have to come back, but he kind of convinced me to come back to help him with his small business. And the rest is history. I've been back ever since. Sometimes I really kind of kick myself because I was like, man, I came back to California. I just can't seem to escape it. So that's just how I ended up here in the Bay Area, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Well, in the Tucson area, I didn't realize it was Tucson. I thought you were much up by Goodyear.
Sure.
And because I know there's an Air Force base up there, but Tucson has got amazing outdoor activities out there.
Yes.
Out there at the mountains, they got mountain bike. Well, I think before we started, you said you'd used to do mountain bike. Be willing to bet that's one of the places you did it.
Let's see. Did I have a mountain bike when I was in Arizona? I don't think that I did, but I had. I was into snowboarding. I've always been into snowboarding, and Arizona, it's funny. People think of it as this hot desert climate, and it is, but you can still snowboard there. And there's a few good places. And actually Tucson, there is a mountain in Tucson called Mount Lemon, and it's got like 2 lifts at the top of it. And it's like the southernmost ski lift in the United States or something along those lines. And so, I was able to do that. And then a lot of hiking and outdoor activities and, going out in the desert, shooting guns and things that you would, never be able to do here in California. It's much more like the Wild West. And the desert climate is, it's particularly like beautiful in its own way. So,
there's a gravel race that in a few years I'm going to go down. It's not really a race; it's a ride that goes down to the border. It starts in some little, like basically a town with a well type thing, and they've got this trading post literally that. And then you ride for about, 5 hours down towards on all these back roads and stuff like that. And again, it's like, I actually do think the Arizona wilderness out there is just absolutely stunningly beautiful, so
Yeah. Well,
I can see why it's like you'd be going, well,
Well, y'all almost lost me. I had a couple of job offers not long ago to go back down there, and for one reason or another, I stayed behind. So I'm still always kind of entertaining that idea. But now my parents, my mom and my stepdad, they moved to Tennessee, and that's enticing as well at some point down the road. So
I went out there to Tennessee. I went to Nashville. Oh my gosh, that's such an amazing part of the country. It's just it's beautiful out there, and the food and the entertainment industry is completely different than here. Yeah, so and the food. So all right, so let's keep going on your story. We got sidetracked a little bit. So you end up here. Excuse me. You end up here in California, Walnut Creek area. And how'd you end up coming to DVC?
Sure. So I worked for my dad for 4 years, and it was he owns and operates a moving and storage company. And so the guys who come to your house and move you from point A to point B, and that's a very difficult industry to work in, and let alone manage. And I did that for 4 years. It was backbreaking hard work. I got my Class A license. I was driving 18-wheelers. I was doing, a lot of my summers. I spent most of it out of state, driving across country. So it was a lot of work, and led to, I already had a contentious relationship with my father prior to that. For just growing up, we weren't super close, and he kind of wasn't really around much when I was first born. And so I think I was trying to kind of, rectify that relationship, and it really just imploded. It was not a good relationship. It wasn't a good working relationship. It was kind of a hostile work environment, all these things. So,
well, and I know enough people who've been in the movie industry. It is brutal.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, I think it's kind of the nature of the beast, in that you're because it's like you said, it's really hard work.
Well, oddly enough, I mean, I think a lot of it too is management, though. For sure, it's hard work. But one of my close friends owns a moving. I'm friends with him and his whole family. They own a moving company nearby, and Waters Moving and Storage. I work for them.
Know them?
Yep.
Yeah, very nice. Wonderful family.
Yeah, wonderful family.
Yep.
Wonderful business. Treats his employees right. Ken Waters. And so I actually, after I left, we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but I worked for them after I had a falling out with my dad, unfortunately, and so. I'll get back to Ken Waters here in a minute, but a lot of it was just what I found to be like unethical business practices and just bad blood between the two of us. And so we just had a lot of differences of opinions and beliefs and moral compasses too. I think it was kind of like it was a point in my life where I really started to realize I don't want to pursue this type of lifestyle. And so I wanted to go back to college. I tried to get his support for that, and he wasn't having it. So we part ways, and I started working for Ken over at Waters part-time, and I started taking classes here part-time. I knew I wanted to go back to school. At this point, it had been, I got out of the military in 2012. This is 2017. So 5 years.
Wow.
5 years.
Okay.
And being out of the military and seeing people I went to school with, seeing people that I knew from the military, other people getting their degrees, I was like very envious, I guess, or just, I really wanted that for myself. And I really felt like, I enjoy learning. I enjoy studying. I've always been, curious by nature. And so I really wanted to get my education, and sure enough, I started here at DVC, and the rest is history. So
when you were here, so you enrolled in 2017, and what was during that time period? Because you're working for Ken Waters,
Yeah.
and he's getting a lot of name, a lot of love. I'm gonna have to reach out to him and see about if we want him to hang a banner up here for him.
Might as well.
But no, he's been a huge supporter for a lot of the local business community, things like the Chambers of Commerce and especially Martinez. Great family. And but so you're going there and you're doing that part time, and so what was, while you were here, what was like the thing that stuck with you from DVC? I mean, what really kind of, because you've gone on to, as we said a little while ago, you're now pursuing your second master's, which, you know, we've just got you back into school. So what was the thing about DVC that you really took away from that?
Well, it was, I built a community here right out of the gate. I mean, undergrad experience is, well, I shouldn't say undergrad. I mean, college, when you're going to classes all the time, you're meeting different people, so on and so forth. But, now as a grad student, I'm only on campus, in the evenings, right? And I'm not spending time around there every day. When I was here at DVC, I was sometimes only here twice a week, sometimes 3, more depending on my schedule. And I was able to plug into the Student Veterans Alliance. And, I was not that far out of the military and looking for, like-minded people and people with similar experiences. And they had a really thriving veterans community here. And it was through that community that I learned how to navigate my benefits better. And really, I mean, that's how I'm on my second master's, is, for being honest. I got in touch with people who knew how to, navigate the complicated system that is the VA, and hey, you're entitled to this, that, and the other thing. And that's something that I noticed too, that a lot of veterans who, they go their whole lives with unresolved issues or problems, or they don't get the help that they need that's available to them because they just don't know. And so having that community while I'm going here, I'm learning, it really just changed my entire life. I was able to, get both feet under me again. Because at that point, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. I was, kind of struggling, and I was able to really turn my life around, and it all started here. So,
well, and your point about the building the community is something I hear over and over and over again, and it's both through the Veterans Center, through Puente, through Emoja, through EOPS, through the million different programs that we have at DVC, and it's mostly it's amazing to me how we want education to be so accessible, right? We want especially for somebody who's like struggling with their life, it's like you want them to get the help they can. Because I mean, you look at where you're at now, and you get here, and you're driving a truck for Ken Waters. Not to say that that's not an honorable job, but you're driving a truck for Ken Waters, and you don't have 2 nickels to rub together. And now you're working at what's your title over at the bank there?
Relationship credit manager.
Okay. So you're working at a bank, and it's not like a small deal what you're doing over there either. So I think that the whole moral of the story is like, go get plugged into the communities here. Cause I know that's probably where you met Jim, and a bunch of the other folks there. So
yeah, he taught, it was funny. He taught my business law class, and not only did he teach that class, but he was also an advisor for the SVA group. And we had known some mutual people out, in the community as well. So we hit it off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But he didn't know I was a vet until he saw me at the Veterans Center one day. Oh, hey, so.
Well, and talk about a little bit about that experience of how because I know what it's like to kind of walk in and you feel like you're an outsider. And how did you get yourself plugged into that? I mean, other than kind of going, raising your hand and going, hey, tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I guess I met other vets who, I met a buddy of mine who was two of my closest friends still to this day I met through the SVA group, but I was invited by one friend. He introduced me to another. These are guys I still talk to till this day. And I guess it kind of happened organically just by sitting in class and going through the motions and meeting people and learning. There's really not much to it when you come to school. It's, you go and sit in a classroom, and if you're around long enough, things start to happen organically. I think you have to go out of your way not to.
Well, but you also said yes and said hi.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I mean there is that. Yeah, I've always been. I like to think I've always been a people person, so that definitely helps.
Well, yeah, and I think again, it's like one of those things of like, then you sit down and you go, oh hey, and then you find out it's like, oh, I've got all these things I can take advantage of, because you don't get a brochure when you leave the military that says, here are all the things you get, do you?
No. So,
excuse me. So you end up getting through DVC, and then where did you go from there?
Yeah, so I was here for 2.5 years, going full time and then working part time, driving trucks, moving furniture. Talk about it really put me, I was able to really put some money in my pocket doing that, because while a lot of students are like working, it paid more than other part-time jobs. Given my like background and like knowledge in that industry, I was able to do pretty well, and really kind of sustain myself going through school, in addition to the benefits that I had. So I was here for 2.5 years, and then I transferred to Cal State East Bay. I wanted to stay local. For me, at that point, I was just really focused on, I wanted to get my degree and move on. And I got to Cal State East Bay, make friends. I majored in economics, and I really enjoyed the econ department over there. And I really enjoyed the professors that were over there. And something about that field, that discipline, it was very, to describe it, but it was just, there's something that I appreciate about that field, because it's very open to, in one way, it's very closed off to new ideas, but in another way, it's very open towards, it kind of like, hey, this is how economics is. There's some variation within it, and that's kind of how your differences of opinion kind of live in this like parameter, I think. And the professors and the people in that program they were great people. And so when I finished, I had the ability to continue on and stay for a master's. And so overall, I spent 4 years at Cal State East Bay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but you also found that educational track that really spoke to you. It's kind of like the magic that's like, oh my gosh, I need to go chase this.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you get done there. And at what point did you end up over at Heritage?
Yeah. So, I started in banking in 2021, right out of undergrad.
Right out of the pandemic.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's still, things are still a little, the pandemic was, it wasn't even the tail end. It was kind of right in the middle of it, in the thick of it. And things were just starting to kind of turn around, and things were starting to open up. And there was all this, the political climate was pretty locally, it was pretty tense because of all of that. And so it was along that backdrop that I got into to banking through an internship program. And I was still pursuing a master's. This is when I just started pursuing my master's, so I was taking night classes. So I was able to work during the day. And yeah, I worked at that bank for about a year, maybe a little longer, before things went sideways, and I had to jump ship. But yeah, so it was First Republic Bank. That was my first bank. It was during I think they named it the great banking crisis of 2023 or something. Like they named it something, banking crisis at least of 2020.
That was about the time there was was it Silicon Valley Bank? Wasn't that it?
Yeah.
That was that whole, because it's like the minute you said First Republic, I went, oh, I remember that. It was just, and I was working in Silicon Valley, and it was like, so when that whole thing started coming unhinged, our first comment to the CFO was like, is this going to affect us?
Yeah.
And it didn't touch us, but it blew a lot of people up.
Yeah. It's, so it was, that banking crisis was a result of, all the things I studied and throughout my time in economics. Really, it was a lot of it had to do with monetary policy, and we had been in a state of artificially low interest rates ever since the Great Recession, and so when the pandemic happened and everything got shut down and trade lines got cut off and so on and so forth, and trying to, reboot, they pumped they pumped a ton of money into the economy, and that led to inflationary pressures, and that it was in that rising rate environment where the Federal Reserve was forced to increase rates quickly, that everything kind of started going to hell in a handbasket. And a lot of banks were not well positioned for that sudden increase to the rate environment because, they and their investors and borrowers got addicted to cheap money. And so when that happened, there was a panic and bank runs ensued. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but at least at a high level, not to bore everybody too much.
Well, and sometime when we turn this off, we'll go have a cup of coffee, and I'd love to get your perspective on it, because like I just watched The Big Short, and I remember living through that when the banking industry, and I actually worked in wholesale lending back in the 90s, and decided that I had to get out when they were lending 110% of the property value. And I couldn't get anybody to explain it to me in a way that made sense.
Right.
And again, it's like, it's that same thing where it's just like, the kind of the adults in the room all left. And I think that's when we get any kind of, big crunch like that, is just usually, unless you have some situation like COVID became the kind of the catalyst for everything. Because then once everything got going again, you had, well, anyways, we'll discuss it another time. You're probably better educated. Well, I know you're better educated on it than I am.
It was the result of many different things. It wasn't just,
it wasn't Bob. We know it was Bob. It really was Bob.
It was like I said, it was, we had been in an artificially low interest rate environment for a very long time, and people got used to that. And so, they really mismanaged the COVID response, and, inflation is a killer. So, luckily, I mean, things, we did a good job of keeping it pretty contained, but I think the banks were just kind of a victim in that scenario. I mean, they're at fault. They didn't, manage their
didn't map their
risk properly for that. But nobody really saw it coming. It was one of those just out of left field things. So,
yeah, it's definitely it was definitely a black swan event. So,
also it's like people have a role to play in that as well. If everybody just, you had big Silicon Valley and investors telling people to go pull their money out of an institution, it caused a panic. And when everybody pulls their money out at one time, a bank can't survive. And so that's what happened. It was really pandemonium it was the pandemonium that ensued. That was, what did those banks in.
And I don't know why I just thought of this, and I don't know why we're talking about it. Actually, I find this very interesting. So it's just, it was kind of like when GameStop was getting ready to fold.
All right.
Right. And you had all the I guess the Reddit investors, right, went in there and basically pumped up the stock value, to basically take advantage of the people that were trying to short it. and screw them in the process. And I found, I mean, I didn't buy any. So, but I did find that whole process to be very interesting in that, the tools that we now have compared to, like, for instance, when, my parents were investing in the 60s, so in the 70s. So it was definitely a different environment, but that must be very interesting as far as economics and then you look at the role that AI is going to continue to play, and that's
the next big thing.
Do you have any thoughts on that? See, I told you this goes everywhere.
Yeah, no, I mean, automation for sure is going to lead to a reduction in jobs. In economic theory, it's one of those things where in the short term, there will be job losses, but, in theory, people adapt and those skill sets move towards other sectors. So it's one of those things where we're about to go through a painful kind of interim process where we try to navigate that as a society. And, it's going to be up to us collectively probably to figure out how we want that to play out. I mean, I think we're in the early stages of AI, and a lot of it's really beneficial and really helpful, but it's changing the game in so many ways regarding, affecting jobs, affecting academia. Papers are all of a sudden a lot easier to write. And, so there's, and then also just in terms of like the kind of content that it can create. I mean, deep fakes are a problem, right? There's a whole lot of ways in which it can get really dark. So it'll be interesting to see in the long run how that affects us all. So that's definitely a big topic. I know in MBA programs and other academic programs are trying to kind of shift people to look at what kind of equip you to use AI and how to use it well, and then kind of shift the focus into different sorts of jobs and skill sets, and ones that aren't going to be not outsourced but replaced by AI in the near future.
So basically, how to use the power of AI for good and not evil. So well, and it's in some ways, and this is harking back. Anytime there's been huge evolutions in, like, for instance, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, one of the big things was when there was a automated loom, and I had the name in my head that I think it was a Jakota system. And it displaced a bunch of mill workers, and I'm explaining this to them. And you had there was a guy, Ludd was his last name, and he basically was protesting that, it's like all these mill workers are being put out of work by this automation, essentially. Unfortunately, the government reacted poorly to that. But that's where the term Luddite comes from, these people come from, and they were seen as not adopting the new technology, but they didn't really have a place to go. And to your point, it's like we need to while there will be some short-term pain, it's like, what can we do to adapt to that, and at the same time help others upskill or skill differently to make that adjustment, I know
we are in many ways, you bring up the Industrial Revolution. We are amidst a new form of that with the generative AI technology coming out and being so easily accessible so quickly. It's like another Industrial Revolution.
Well, and today, right now, on this day, is the worst version of AI you're going to see. Right. Because it'll be better tomorrow. Yeah. So, that was, somebody told me that quote. I can't remember who it was, but I went, oh, I like that. So I'm going to keep beating that one to death. So, see, we wandered all over the place, and we're not done yet. Yeah, so you're on to a new. So you did your MBA in economics,
a master. Yeah. So it was a Master of Science in Quantitative Economics. So it was
my goodness,
it was like a STEM designated master's degree.
Okay. Which a previous company I worked at, we were a data. It still is a data company, and it was. So I tend to kind of geek out a lot about data. It's just I think it's awesome. But so now you because that wasn't enough, and you're married and you're got a kid on the way any day now, right? You decided to go hunt down another MBA.
Yeah.
So, wait, we need to go back. So, tell us how you ended up at Heritage.
Oh, sure.
With Clancy
Well, the banking industry in any given area is pretty tight knit. So, people tend to know one another, and once you're in the banking industry, it's a lot easier to stay in it, and it's a lot harder to get back into it if you leave, and so on and so forth. So, luckily, I was able to lateral pretty quickly to a new company, and I ended up at Heritage. I've been there for a year and a half now, maybe a little longer. Time seems to be flying these days, so I don't even know. My timeline might be off in this whole series here, but So I went from that bank to another bank shortly before going over to Heritage, where I'm at now. So, completely different type of bank, given that it's a community bank that serves businesses and business owners. So, it's different, much different than the other two banks that I had worked for, which were much larger in scale and just kind of had a different, different culture. So each kind of corporation has its own culture, right? And so, that's it. I mean, that's, I work amongst, friends and prior coworkers and
well, now it's time for the Heritage commercial, since we already did Ken Waters. So the thing I'm impressed about with Heritage is it really is a community bank. And for those that don't know, and we also have so we get shout out to the Heritage Bank. Thank you to our sponsor. That's not really why we're doing this. But,
I take it you didn't put that up just for me.
No, actually this was from our Dan Brown thing in last fall, and also the football game, and even in the spring we had to thank you for the sponsors of the scholarships and stuff. But the thing about community banks is, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the difference between just a regular bank and a community bank, because I know that the culture for them is different, and kind of the focus on them is very different.
Right. Well, I mean, a big bank is focused on, they're dealing with larger, so in terms of business banking, they're dealing with larger businesses. You're dealing with, major corporations and things of that nature. So if I was to go, work for Wells Fargo, I might be, dealing with mega corporations as a banker. Whereas, smaller banks, they're dealing with smaller to medium-sized businesses, and a community bank is going to be much more focused on the community that it's in. It's not, it's not a nationwide corporation. So community banks such as Heritage reinvest into the communities that they're in, and whether that's through sponsoring local activities, having a presence in the community, things of that nature. Also, you're going to have a more of a personal touch at a bank such as ours, where we are looking to have a relationship with our clients. It's not just a numbers game like some of the bigger banks. I mean, if you work at, once again, just using big name banks, I'm not trying to throw anybody out of the bus there, but like a Chase or something, they're going to have lots of, small accounts, kind of people off the street. It's just less of it's more transactional in nature because of the size.
Well, and one of the things I do like about community banks is that you're right. It's about the personal touch. And I know one long time ago, there was a bank we had, and I can't remember the name of it. It got absorbed. But the thing I liked about it is, anytime I walked in there with one of my kids, they go, "Oh, Mr. Daly." Yeah. They knew who I was when I walked through the door every single time. They made a point of that. That was important to them. Sure. And well, I mean, I don't do any of my banking in a branch anymore, so it's just, it's all online. But to your point, if I'm a business banker, it's good to have that person you can call when there is an issue, as opposed to trying to work your way through the phone tree.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can contact me directly, and if I can't figure out what the issue is, then I know who to call to figure that out. So it's you're not lost in 1-800 numbers and things like that. And also just the types of businesses that a bank like mine services. It's, we service, local businesses that are, some industries that big banks don't want to deal with because they're, it's just not prudent for them, when it comes to risk, because they're all looking at numbers games, and we're looking more on, we have a lot more flexibility. We don't have to just do simple box checking on our end. We can say, okay, we have the flexibility to tailor banking solutions for individual businesses based on their needs instead of just providing them with a one size fits all option. That's really the biggest difference.
And I think that that's an important distinction, because the thing is too is you're also at the same time, while yes, through local sponsorships, that's you're reinvesting in the community, but you're also, because you're banking, not only do you but you also have local loans and things like that you're doing back into the community that you're servicing, as opposed to somebody in Wyoming, or not that there's anything wrong with Wyoming, but again, it's like you're actually there to service that community, as opposed to just, making your numbers.
Yeah. I mean, as a whole, the whole bank is, it's situated right here in the Bay Area. It services the Bay Area, right? That's community, for Wyoming, for example, I'm sure they have great community banks there, but when you're Toyota and you need a loan, that's when you're dealing with, the big banks.
Yeah.
You're dealing with real big numbers, real big kind of entities. So
there you are at Heritage, and you've got a child on the way any minute now. We're redoing that. We're doing this part again. And you decided that it was time to get another MBA.
So I decided that before the baby was on the way, but so I've been doing that for about a year now. Feels longer actually, but yeah, no, I'm about a year into the program, maybe more. I've got 2 semesters left of it. So, but I was in between. This is right after, First Republic Bank. I'd gotten my master's in economics. I had been considering pursuing a PhD in economics. And after my master's program, I was pretty burnt out on it. I couldn't see myself doing another 4 to 6 years of it. I was at that level. I was like, okay, I'm good with a master's in this field. But drawn to higher education, drawn to academia, and I had most importantly, which was the main motivator, was I had educational benefits left. So believe it or not, and very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. And so I just decided, you know what? So many people in my career field and, just in kind of the corporate world, have MBAs, whatever, I might as well get one of those too, just so that I have that, and then kind of reassess. I obviously I'm on the board here at the DVC Foundation. I have, this is my third college that I'm going to now. For whatever reason, I'm drawn towards, academia and teaching and learning. And so I figured at some point, I might want to teach, and I'd pursue a doctorate at some point in what I don't know. But that's just kind of where I'm at now. It was just something for me to do because I felt that it was relevant and applicable to my career. And it would kind of give me a chance to use those benefits and kind of reassess, what might I want to do in the future if I look to teach, what would I be interested in?
So, I think the important part of this message is you're not leaving anything on the table as far as your benefits go. It's like, you're going to take advantage of everything you possibly can, which is outstanding. So where are you going? Where are you pursuing your MBA at?
St. Mary's College of California in Moraga.
Go Gales.
Go Gales.
Yeah. So So tell us a little bit about that, because I know just recently you got back from a trip on that. So talk about the trip.
That's right. So the MBA program, every summer they take the current cohort on a 2-week trip to overseas to let's go back. St. Mary's is part of a network of Catholic colleges run by the Christian Brothers of De La Salle. And so they have these different colleges and university networks throughout the world. And so the business program at St. Mary's has a kind of like a student exchange program with the university in Barcelona. So they'll send their business MBA students out here for 10 days in the summer, and they send a cohort. St. Mary's sends a cohort out to Barcelona. So it's a global immersion program in which you get to spend time in another country, learn about that culture, learn about how business is done there, and in this case, kind of Europe as a whole. And you get to just kind of take in the sites. It's, we went to we spent some time on the campus there. We spent a lot of time visiting different sorts of companies. We had cultural visits, tours, things of that nature. So it was just like a good, like it sounds, immersive experience that we were all, we all had a blast, and we were really fortunate to.
Did you get down to the beach? Because Barcelona has a marvelous beach.
Yeah, so it did. I didn't actually make it down to a beach day. I went by the beach, and one of our trips was, we went out on the harbor. So we saw like their import export operations there. And we took a boat like around the harbor. So that was a lot of fun. That was really cool. But I didn't get a beach day in personally. I was, had other things I was doing. I know a lot of people did. And I know a lot of like the younger crowd were out clubbing, and the club was on the beach, and they were doing that whole thing. So, but no, I was too busy riding a electric Vespa around the city. And
no, I was there in quite a few years ago. It was 2016 or 17.
Okay.
But it was like end of October or mid-October or something like that. It was not beach weather.
Oh,
but it was, or it may have mid-November. It was pretty chilly out there, but I was there for a conference, and I loved it. The food was amazing, and the people are so nice, so what did you find contrasting, like, for instance, business, and you're doing kind of like the quickie tour there, because 2 weeks is not really enough to, other than to kind of get a familiarity with it. But did you see some of the contrasting differences between like Barcelona and Europe and here, United States and California? What were some of the contrasts that really stood out to you, other than the not getting a beach day?
Right. Well, in terms of like, are you talking in business or cultural? Okay.
Well, both. We'll go with business first, then we can talk cultural.
Sure. Well, certainly there's just a difference in terms of, out there they work so that they can live, not live to work, which I know is a kind of a cliche statement that you'll hear thrown around, but it's true. I think, that can be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. So I don't think it's like, oh, we need to adopt that model all the way here. I think there's a lot of good things about the United States and our work ethic. But yeah, that was definitely a big difference, was just kind of their more laid back attitude towards everything, towards business. So you could definitely see that money wasn't a big motivator over there like it is here culturally. We're very reliant on tips. We're very reliant on promotion and the next best thing. We're just kind of very motivated by money, but they're not so much. But the caveat, yes, they get paid more, but the service also isn't as, because they don't have that carrot. The service, or productivity might not be as high as here. So I noticed that. Also just the way Europeans do business, which I definitely admire, where you just don't come out guns blazing and start talking business and going for the sell, that's not the way business is done in Europe. It's much more, you know, we'll get to that. When we get to that, let's get to know each other first, because I want to get to know, more about you as a person. So those are some of the things that I noticed, prior to, in terms of business in the short amount of time. And, some of that was taken, from some of the classroom instruction that I had there as well. And I got to see that play out while I was there. But outside of that, I definitely like that tax is included in the price. That was a good thing.
Yeah.
Now we're speaking more culturally. I love the motorcycle/scooter culture. That was pretty amazing. Just a lot more people getting around that way. And
part of that is, I think, because they don't have the bigger is better attitude. And so you throw everybody on a Vespa and it's like, even if it's electric Vespa, it's like life is awesome.
Yeah. They're just so densely packed there, and there's not they don't have parking lots like they do here. So, at least in the cities, right? So that was, so that was just different, differences in culture. It was interesting just to experience all the different facets. Some things I liked, some things I didn't. I missed air conditioning. I missed ice in my drinks. I'm a big cold drink person. So
really, I'm thinking back, and I guess it's one of those. I mean, it was November or whatever it was, so it's like I didn't really notice. But it's I mean, the main thing for me was just the food was amazing.
Yeah.
I did. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, I mean, you're walking around a town that's 2,000, 3,000 years old. And so, they don't have a lot of room for cars.
Right.
So, whereas here we grew up with cars, our cities grew up with, towns grew up with cars.
Yeah.
So what would you take back from that experience is like, as far as like, what do you look at as far as adopting for your style? We'll just say.
Well, I don't know if there's like one thing that I would just adopt. I think, like I said, there's facets of that culture and the way they do business there that I like. But I think just overall, it's the experience. And I think that was the point of the program, was to really help form you as an individual and as a business person, business professional. And so I think that it's more about the experience for me. I have a different perspective. Now I get to say, oh, well, this is how they do it, in Spain.
Yeah.
Whereas, my other experiences, I haven't gotten to travel too much other than the military and my honeymoon. I mean, I'm working on it, and, it'll be more difficult with kids too. So we'll see how much I get to travel, but I think
so your previous reference was, well, this is how we do it in Walnut Creek.
Right.
So
yeah.
Or Tucson.
Yeah.
So so what do you see as like the next little bit for you as far as what it looks like? And granted, you got kids, you got a wife, you got a job, you got all that stuff. And so 5 years from now, who knows what's going to happen? But
yeah. I mean, short-term goals, right? I mean, finish the MBA, continue doing what I do at work, and moving up, in my career, right? Those two things are paramount. But I think for me, it's like, I'm the kind of person who I always keep myself busy because I always want to progress to the next thing, in terms of whether it's career development, educational development, spiritual development. I'm just always hungry to improve myself. And so obviously with a family, that's difficult, but I think, finding balance, and then just also, as I lead my household, kind of putting, getting everybody on that track to better themselves in one way or another. So, I mean, really at the end of the day, it's, I put in all this work so that I can, support a family and really set them up for the long run. I mean, that's really at the end of the day what's the most important thing in my life is, I'm not doing everything that I do just for accolades and, because it's all about me. The point is that it's not all about me anymore. And so I gotta work hard to set up, my family for success. So.
And have you found that a transition that's been easy for you to walk into? Or I know that's a tough question, but it's like, and it's an ongoing question.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I think during the pandemic, that's really I turned 30 during the pandemic, and so 30 was a big year for me in terms of like, what am I doing? Where am I going?
Mm-hmm.
I started to kind of get nervous about my future because I've just kind of been a hot mess express for my entire 20s. Partying and riding motorcycles and living life to the fullest and not really thinking about tomorrow. I kind of had that live fast, die young mentality throughout my 20s. And then my 30s came and I was really like, man, I'm an adult. Like, I need to get my life together. So that was that. And then just the pandemic and overall really kind of shifted my focus and made me want to re-examine things in my life. So those two things happened all at once, and that's when I kind of really started working on myself.
If you had to talk to yourself as a younger man,
oh yeah,
this is always a good question.
Yeah,
what would you tell yourself? A piece of advice for you 10 years before, or in your 20s.
I would say I would say you need faith. I would encourage myself to reconnect with my faith, which I had fallen away from in my early 20s, and embrace the importance of structure and discipline. I mean, I would really stay on the straight and narrow, because I made a lot of mistakes in my life that were a result of me pursuing my own self-interest and not really, being short-sighted. So I think I'd be convincing myself, think about the long run, think about the future, think about, eternity, like, the reward for your soul, but also think about the life 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make mistakes.
Invest in the future.
Don't throw it all away.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yeah.
All right. So before our camera here stops investing in the future. So I want to thank you so much for coming by. This has been great.
Thanks. Yeah. Appreciate you having me over here.
Oh yeah. So now with that, we will actually sign off.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next, the podcast for the DVC Alumni Association. You can contact us at alumni@dvc.edu with any comments, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our podcast.